The following shiur is dedicated and sponsored by Mrs. Moriah Chesler of Cherry Hill, New Jersey. She embodies the concepts I'm about to speak about as an Eshes Chayil who is looking for the truth in today's world, where the truth is so blurred by many false ideologies, by a lot of noise, and by incorrect world outlooks which are not shaped purely by Torah. But Moshe Feinstein, in fact, was once attacked violently, physically, and in writing about one of his psakim. And Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, although you guise your ideology in Kedusha, it's not Kedusha. It's coming from outside influences. He said, every single word that I say, think, and write is only coming from Torah. I've never seen anything in my life except for Torah. And every ideology and thought that I write is coming from only Torah, and therefore it can be relied on as psak halacha and correct hashkafa. And this is a very great challenge in the world today, because the world is so confused, and especially when it comes to the issue of a woman's role in today's society, issues are very, very confusing. I want to relate to you a story that happened to me about an hour and a half ago. I was completing my davening at the Kosel. It's Rosh Chodesh Tammuz today. And as we were driving out of the Kotel Plaza, there was a group of 15 to 20 women who were singing at the top of their lungs, Hallel. There were a few men there in the group. They had a sign to the Prime Minister, I'm not even sure who that is anymore, of Israel, that they should reappropriate the Kotel to include them, permitting them to pray and all of their rituals in the regular women's section. And I couldn't help but think, it's so sad, right? The role of a Jewish woman is so beautiful. Kol kvoda bas melech penima. David HaMelech tells us in Tehillim. Kol kvoda bas melech penima. All of the honor of a Jewish woman is penima. On one hand, that means inside the home. A woman is meant to act with tznius. And in fact, the Rambam paskins halach l'maaseh in his Sefer Yad HaChazaka. The Rambam paskins, he writes that a woman should not go out more than once or twice a month. In fact, a man should stop his wife. It's in the Rambam Hilchos Ishus. You want to look it up? Yud Aleph Yud Gimel 11:13 in Hilchos Ishus. The Rambam writes, a husband should stop his wife from leaving home more than once or twice a month. Right? Now, as we'll see, that is not halacha l'maaseh today. Although the Tur and I believe the Shulchan Aruch, in fact, quote this. The Tur and the Ramah in Eben Ezer, Ayin Gimel, Siman Ayin Gimel, Aleph, quote the words of the Rambam, right? But this is not halacha l'maaseh. Today, we see that women are leaving the home today. They're going to work. They're, as Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes, there's a halacha that a man is not supposed to walk after a woman. It could cause a man to have inappropriate thoughts. He says, but today, you walk on the street, there are more women in the street than men. And you go in front of one woman, there's another woman there. You go in front of her, and there's another woman there. So it's not really possible to fulfill this advice of Chazal today. It says it's better to walk after a lion than walk after a woman. It's very impractical to say. Perhaps the men should be inside today. But as the great Rosh Hashiva, Rav Binyamin Moskowitz, once pointed out, he said it used to be they would take the crazy people and lock them up in mental asylums. He said today they take the same people and lock them up in Bati Midrashim and shuls, places where of Kedusha. That's where you can maintain your sanity. But this is the challenge that a Jewish woman faces today. On one hand, women are meant to be on the inside and be the paradigm of tznius, right? And their beauty should be reserved for their husband. On the other hand, right, today women are are out there, right? They're in the workplace, and they're doing many, many wonderful, productive things. Since Sarah Schneer started the Beis Yaakov movement, right? Or perhaps we could phrase it slightly differently, when the trend towards women leaving the home became more prevalent, so Sarah Schneer was in touch with the Chofetz Chaim to strengthen women's education, and Chofetz Chaim said, yes, we should definitely do this. We have to break out of the normal standard tradition that's been for the past 3,000 years. We have to make a change. It's time to make a change, not a radical change. Women are not meant to be educated in everything, right? According to Chazal, women are not meant to study Gemara on an in-depth level. There are certain passages of Gemara which it's fine for them to learn, but the type of in-depth learning that men do in yeshivas, that is, according to the poskim, not a woman's job. She doesn't have a mitzvah to do it, and she's not built for that. Right? As I once heard from Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, a beautiful concept. He said the role of men and women differs. Men are supposed to give over the content of Har Sinai, and women are supposed to give the experience of Har Sinai. Women build a Jewish home, a structure, they teach their children, and they are a role model to their children and their families. They can do wonderful things, and there are many women today who are doing amazing, amazing things, making a major, major impact on the world. I'm fortunate to know many of them. And they should continue. Each one should continue in their own role, right? But the role of a woman is not to be wearing talis and tefillin. In fact, although Rashi's daughters did wear talis and tefillin, supposedly that's what we understand. But as another story from Rav Soloveitchik, this time the brother of Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik of YU, a woman once came to him and said, "I would like to wear a talis. I'd like to wear a talis." Rav Soloveitchik said, "It's a good idea, but let's start slowly. I'm not going to. We're not going to do the. We want to go in gradation. So first, wear a talis without tzitzis. Okay? Wear a talis without tzitzis, and then come back to me in a week or two, and we'll see about progression." So the woman that week davened with a talis. She comes back to Rav without tzitzis. She comes back to Rav Soloveitchik, and he says, "How was it?" She says, "It was unbelievable. I felt so close to God. I felt all of the doors were open and complete vacates to the Borei Olam." So Rav Soloveitchik says, then it is totally forbidden for you to wear a talis. She said, "Why?" Because wearing a talis without tzitzis on it is not a mitzvah. In fact, for a man, it's an avera. There's absolutely no mitzvah to wear it. And therefore, you're attracted to superficiality of the mitzvah. Right? As one person pointed out, by these women, they wear talis and tefillin, and their husbands don't. Right? And the reason is there's an attraction to superficiality of the mitzvah. A person who does a mitzvah because of superficiality, right? Because they want to have their picture in the newspaper and on television, and to publicize the fact that they're standing up for women's rights, to wear a talis and tefillin, and to have it in the Coastal Plaza and read Kriyas Torah, right? This is not what Rashi's daughters did. Rashi's daughters were purely, had 100% pure intentions. Their father was one of the holiest Jews of the past 1,000 years, and they did it with completely pure intentions. They were married to some of the greatest husbands ever, the Bali Tosos, and therefore they were allowed to wear a talis and tefillin. But the rest of the women should know there's a number of reasons why women don't wear talis and tefillin. Rav Yonasan ben Uziel writes that it's kli gever. It's considered beged ish, it's considered men's clothing. That's one reason. Another reason is because the physiological makeup of a man and woman differs, and because of certain processes that go on in a woman's body, it's inappropriate for them to wear tefillin. And there are numerous other reasons, but the most important reason is they're not obligated. Just like a man is not obligated in certain mitzvahs that a woman is, right? A man is not obligated to light Shabbos candles. It's the woman's chiyuv. It's true if there's no woman, then he has to light. But the Rambam writes, since a woman is in charge of the home, she lights Shabbos candles. Women are the usually ones who take challah, Rosh Hashanah. There are many mitzvahs that women do that men don't do. And there are many mitzvahs that men do that women don't do. Each one has their own unique special role in Klal Yisrael. And each one should cherish their role and try to do it properly. So let's take a few minutes and try to understand how, since the Rambam, society has changed and how the halacha deals with that change. As we mentioned, the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus writes, and it's quoted by the Torah and the Ramah in Even Ezra and Gimel, that a woman, the way of a Jewish woman is to leave their homes once or twice a month, and a husband is meant to be on top of that. And they cite the verse that we mentioned in Tehillim, Kol HaKavod Bas Melech Pnima, Kol HaKavod Bas Melech Pnima. And the question is, so what about today? What about today? The times have definitely changed. So even before we get to today, it's important to know that even though the Shulchan that the Ramah writes this as halacha, but it's not so simple. The one of the famous, or maybe it's not so famous, but for those who know, famous achronim, early achronim, it's called the Mari Bruna, Shut Mari Bruna. It's in it's Tshuva Reish Mem Beis 242, and he writes that even though the Gemara says Kol Yisrael b'nei Melachim, all the Jewish people are children of kings. This is a Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Ches and Aleph, right? But in fact, this is not the halacha l'maisa. The Ramban writes in Milchamas and Sukkot Gimel Amud Beis that whenever the Gemara says a concept and lists a number of rabbis who followed that concept, then we do not paskin halacha l'maisa like this. And halacha l'maisa, we do not rule that all the Jewish people are children of kings, and therefore writes the Mari Bruna, right? The pasuk Kol Kavod Bas Melech Pnima is not halacha l'maisa. It's not halacha l'maisa. It's a nice idea. It's a nice concept. It's certainly praiseworthy if a woman can spend as much time at home as possible, but this does not forbid a woman, halacha l'maisa, to go out of the house and to go to work or to do whatever she needs to do outside the house. This is how the Mari Bruna writes halacha l'maisa. Now, certainly, while maybe in the times of the Rambam that wasn't the accepted halacha, but certainly today that women are leaving the house, certainly the opinion of the Mari Bruna is the opinion which the minhag follows that. The minhag follows that. Now, I did receive a correspondence from a husband who was interested in his wife staying home. He didn't want his wife to go to work. The wife very much wanted to go to work. And I told him what my Rebbe, Maran Hagoin Hatzadik Hagadol, Rav Shlomo Yedidia Safrani, told me. He said, the most successful way to navigate a marriage is the woman should take care of her responsibilities and the man should take care of his responsibilities. When the man starts telling the woman what to do and the woman starts telling the man what to do, this is when the problems start. Now, it is true, the Gemara Bava Metzia tells us, that women are in charge of Mili Da'alma, worldly matters, and men are in charge of Mili the Shemaya, right? And assuming that each one accepts upon themselves that the other one is in charge, that is wonderful, right? But that doesn't mean they should be telling each other what to do. They can set basic guidelines in the home, but not telling. A man who tells a woman what to do is making a big mistake. And a woman who tells a man what to do is making probably even a bigger mistake because men's egos are very, very big. Yeah. And as a man, I tell you that it's not easy for a man to listen to what his wife says, even though the Gemara in Bava Metzia says if your wife is short and she gives you advice about Mila D'Alma, you should bend down to listen to what she has to say. But men have big egos, and it's hard for us men to listen to wives, and it's hard for the women to listen to their husbands, right? When it has to do with personal issues, when it has to do with klolei bias, like how we're going to set up the home, it's very worthwhile to follow Chazal's directive. The men should be in charge of the spiritual things in general, and the women should be in charge of the worldly matters. But in other areas, each one should be in charge of their own life and live their own life and not be directed by their spouse, right? This is very, very critical. And therefore, if a person wants to have a proper, beautiful marriage where the Shekhinah dwells in their home, right? As Rav Shimon Galoi told me not so long ago, he said the reason that some Jewish marriages don't work out is because they don't know what a Jewish marriage is. A Jewish marriage means the Shekhinah is resting on their home. The Shekhinah rests on the home when there's Shalom Bayis. There is Shalom Bayis when each side knows to let the other side do what they need to do and accomplish what they need to accomplish and not do what they can't do. And then there's peace and mutual understanding and respect. The Shekhinah dwells on their home. But if each side is criticizing and complaining, etc., about the other side, the Shekhinah will not dwell in their home, and that's not a Jewish home. It's destined for destruction and failure. So these are very, very critical ideas that need to be repeated over and over today. As my Rebbe, Hagon Atzadik, Moreno Rabbeinu, Rav Shlomo Leib Revda Zatzal, said many times, he said, today even the most simple things that were known for all through generations are not known. And therefore I tell my students everything. I lay it on clearly because people just don't know. They just don't know how a person is meant to act in a Jewish marriage. And therefore, these concepts have to be spoken about and repeated and repeated and repeated because we don't see it today so much. It's rare to see it, right? I have one close friend, Rabbi Moshe Schaefer. He was my neighbor in Neve Yaakov. When you walk into the home of Moshe and Rivka Schaefer, you feel the Shekhinah. You feel like you just walked into the Beis Hamikdash, right? And any home, right? I could tell you many, many other homes have that, right? I'm zocha to know many, many tzaddikim, that when you walk into their home, you could feel the Shekhinah because there's Shalom B'neihem, and when there's Shalom B'neihem, there's Shekhinah B'neihem, right? And this comes from each spouse recognizing the unique role and personality of their spouse, right? And we should know, right? A person is brought into a marriage, it's not perfect. They have to perfect themselves and not perfect their spouse, right? You perfect, one of the major ways that a man and woman perfect themselves is by accepting the faults of the other spouse. The faults, the shortcomings, or the differences. We don't even have to call them faults, we call them differences. When I got married to my wife, who's from Rio de Janeiro, right? And if you want to know something about Rio de Janeiro, my brother-in-law told me that he was in Rio and they ordered some food in a restaurant, and 3 hours later it hadn't come. And nobody was upset. Nobody was upset. In a New Yorker, that's where I'm from, yeah, after 3 minutes, if the food hasn't come, what's going on here? Let's get moving. Imagine putting such a couple together. Imagine what is going to happen, right? After 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes, we got to an hour that's already 180. No, am I making a mistake? No, it's already 60 knocks. Sorry, it's 20 knocks an hour. 3 hours is going to be 60 knocks. Yeah. So imagine how such a marriage is going to transpire. And the amazing thing was that our shadchan was none other than Rav David Cohen, Shlita, Hagoyin Hagadol, Maran, he's already considered one of the Gedolim, Rav David Cohen Shlita, who Rav Shach said is the Gadol in the next generations, which we're in now. He was recently in America, and 25,000 people came out to greet him, singing Yomim Al Yimei Melech Tosef, which is a song reserved for Gedolei Hador. And yet, 30-something years ago, when he accidentally invited my wife and myself to a Shabbos table, so he put the two of us together. Little knowing the differences between Rio de Janeiro and New York. As I like to say, John Gray wrote a book which is must reading for anyone who's married. Men are from Mars and women from Venus, as certain Gedolim told me that you must read that book. Or not that you must read it, but it's very worthwhile to read that book. As I have my own book I'm writing, which is that New Yorkers are from Pluto and Brazilians are from Mercury. But Baruch Hashem, my wife and I have learned to accept our differences and respect our differences, and we've both grown tremendously from this experience, tremendously. We got a tangent a little bit from the initial topic, which is a woman's role in today's society. But a husband has to know women's roles have changed. It's not like the times of Chazal, when all women were inside and they were just knitting and spinning thread and knitting, doing these things that are mentioned in Eishes Chayil. Husbands must respect the changes that have taken place. And I was in the airport, and a woman had a travel bag, it said it's a women's world. And in fact, there's a makor to what she's saying in the Zohar. Zohar writes that in the end of days, which we're in now, that the end of days, which we're in now, in the Ichvus and the Mashiach, right, that women will become slowly and slowly equal and perhaps even above men. Right, it has to do with the midah of Malchus, which is the woman's midah. And as we get closer and closer to the Gula, the attribute of Malchus is becoming stronger and stronger. And this is what we're facing today. These are the challenges that we're facing today as a woman's role becomes more and more stronger, as women become more and more involved in the workforce, they take positions of leadership and power. It becomes increasingly more difficult, number one, for the men to accept them as equals, even though in certain respects they should. The word equal actually is not a good word because each one is his own specific, unique role, and they're meant to do it to the best of their ability, right? But that's the most important thing, is that a woman should recognize the special, special role that she has, and a man should recognize the special, special role that he has. Yeah, as was in fact asked of me to speak about transgender marriages and things like this, right, which are becoming more and more prevalent today. This is because men do not realize what a tremendous asset to society they are, and women don't recognize what a tremendous asset to society they are. If a person's neshama was put into a man or to a woman, it means that's where it's meant to be, not to change, to stay the way you are. Now, there is such a thing as a man's neshama being put in a woman and a woman's neshama being put in a man. And I saw in a sefer written by a chashiv, Talmud Chacham, who lives across the street here, called Dor Tapuchos, a whole sefer written about gender changes, where he does discuss this point that sometimes men want to be women and women want to be men because a male neshama is in a female and a female neshama is a male. Perhaps the most recognized, famous examples of that is Yosef Atzadik. Yosef was supposed to be a girl, right? A girl, but Leah davened, yes, that her seventh child should be a girl and not a boy, so that Rachel would have two boys. So the neshama of Yosef was a female neshama in a male body. And that's why sometimes you see Yosef combing his hair and crying and doing other more female activities, as opposed to Dinah, right, who was supposed to be a boy, right? You see her going out, getting abducted, and doing all sorts of male type activities. So this is one of the reasons why people are very attracted to the other gender's lifestyle today. And this is a mistake because we're meant to respect and cherish and appreciate each one their own activities and their own strengths. As we get closer and closer to Mashiach, we'll see that it gets even stronger and stronger and stronger, right? Women will become more powerful in the world. They'll take more of a leadership and frontline role, and men will have to accept that. But at the same time, women should accept their special, unique role and not try and to take on the male role. And as men should not try to take on the women role. Right? Whatever our gedolim, whatever rabbis have instructed us that this is acceptable behavior for a woman, women should pursue it. They should pursue careers. They should pursue academics. They should pursue building their families, whatever they choose and their strengths are, they should do it, but they should not do it at the cost of a Torah lifestyle. Right? And there are many women today who are confused by the changes in the world and what's going on today to think that perhaps the Torah has changed. The Torah has not changed one iota. The only thing that's changed in the world is ideologies. We are not changing today because of the ideologies. The Torah in every generation, as was I once heard from Rav Nata Schiller, Shlita, he should be well. He said it's like a building. When you build a skyscraper, it has to be a little bit of movement. You have to put into the design. They could move a little bit in the wind slightly, because otherwise it'll fall down. The Torah is sensitive to the changes of generations and has a response to that. And what the Rabbanim are saying today, Chavetz Chaim told Sarah Schneer, and the directives that Rabbanim are giving today are all based on Torah understanding. The changing of the world does elicit new halachas and new hanhagas, which were there before. But that's not because the Torah has changed in iota, right? The world has changed, and the Torah understands and delves into the depths of the world and can give us. So as we get closer and closer to Mashiach, and we're hoping any day now that he's going to come, we're witnessing these changes, and we're hoping that the Mashiach's coming will be very, very soon. I once again give my heartfelt bracha to Mrs. Moriah Chesler, who sponsored this year and dedicated this year, and asked me to repeat it because the first version of the shir was given outside on a windy day and was inaudible, right? So we brought the shir indoors and we recorded it, and I hope she should have the greatest hatzlacha, success in everything she does. And I once again express my gratitude for her feedback she gives me on my shir. And I ask all my listeners, please give me feedback, because the only way that I can grow and understand what the needs are of others is to get feedback from other people. And I truly appreciate that, right? I can't get away with anything. I know because Mrs. Chesler will immediately let me know that if something was how it was based on her understanding, which I appreciate very greatly. Right? So she should be blessed with uh, children, grandchildren who are involved with Torah and mitzvahs and Yerushalayim, and she should see true success in everything she does, as every single Jew should, and she should continue to walk in the ways of Eishes Chayil and exemplify the beautiful ways that our Chachamim have outlined the Jewish woman is meant to go in. Amen. Kein Ratzon.